Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take your source material, unpack it, and give you the essential insights.
Yep, and today we're getting into the world of knowledge management, specifically looking at Neuron 5.0 and its approach to note-taking.
Our sources today are excerpts straight from Neuron 5.0's documentation, plus descriptions of Obsidian and Notion, also from their own materials.
And just to be clear, everything we discuss is based only on what these specific texts tell us, no outside info.
Exactly. Our goal here is simple. Give you a clear understanding straight from these sources of how Neuron 5.0 handles notes. We'll really dig into its Markdown editor and how that stacks up against what Obsidian and Notion describe.
Think of it as your focus briefing on this specific aspect of these tools.
Right. And Neuron 5.0 itself, well, the source material starts big, doesn't it? Promising to revolutionize your workflow and unlock your potential.
It does. It frames itself as offering a comprehensive suite of powerful tools. High aims from the get-go.
Okay, so let's unpack that promise. Starting with the core function, getting ideas down, Neuron 5.0's docs mention smart notes and AI assistants. Where does that actually begin?
Well, the foundation they describe is capturing ideas using what they call a rich Markdown editor.
Markdown, so plain text formatting?
Basically, yes, a way to structure notes using simple symbols without complex menus. The source material makes it clear this editor is built around that standard.
And the documentation actually lists the specific Markdown it supports, right? It gets into the detail.
It does. It confirms support for the basics you'd expect, like headings using the hash symbols, hashtag heading 1, hashtag tag heading 2, and so on, to structure your notes.
Standard stuff. And emphasis.
Yep, making text bold or italic using asterisks or underscores. Pretty standard Markdown syntax there.
Crucial for making things readable. Now, you mentioned it's a rich editor. The source talks about handling code. That seems important for some users.
Absolutely. It explicitly mentions support for inline code for those small snippets. And also for larger chunks, it describes support for code blocks. They even give a specific JavaScript example in the documentation.
Console.log, code block, that one.
That's the one. And it implies you can specify the language, suggesting syntax highlighting. That's a big deal if you're documenting code or technical details.
Definitely. What about structuring information with lists? Outlines, steps, that sort of thing.
Also covered, the source confirms support for both unordered lists, using dashes or asterisks, and numbered ordered lists. Standard Markdown lists.
And linking out, referencing websites or external resources?
Yes, the standard Markdown link format, link text, https://example.com, is mentioned as supported, so you can easily link to external information.
Okay, and quoting text, like if you're pulling in information from somewhere else.
Block quotes are explicitly mentioned too, using this symbol, useful for setting apart quotations or key passages.
So the foundation is solid, standard Markdown, formatting, lists, links, code, quotes. What about the experience of using it? The source mentions something interactive.
Ah, right. It highlights a specific feature, a toggle button. You can switch between writing your Markdown and seeing a live preview.
Using the preview content edit Markdown button it mentions?
Exactly. So you can instantly see how your formatting looks without, exporting or switching apps. That back and forth is built in.
That sounds much smoother for writing. Okay, so that covers the basics. But rich Markdown editor implies more. What else does the Neuron 5.0 source say makes it rich?
Well, it lists several other integrated capabilities. For instance, it mentions support for LaTeX or KTeX math notation.
Oh, okay. So proper mathematical equations right in the note.
Exactly. That's huge if you're in science, engineering, academia, any field using complex math. No need for images or separate tools for occasions.
That is a significant feature for certain workflows. What about tasks or to-dos within a note?
Yes, the source points to GFM to-do lists. That's GitHub-flavored Markdown. It means you can create interactive checkboxes, like or X, directly in your notes.
So your notes can double as task lists for related items. Useful.
Very. It blends information and action. The source also mentions custom hashtag styling.
Meaning the tags you use might look different, stand out more.
That's the implication, yeah. Making organization visually clearer within the note itself. And then there's embedding content, which sounds really interesting.
Embedding, like pulling things into the note.
Precisely. The source specifically describes block paragraph embedding using a format like note block ID.
Wait, hold on. So you can reference not just a whole note, but a specific part of another note, like one paragraph.
That's exactly what the description implies. You could potentially build a new note by pulling in specific relevant chunks from others you've already written.
That sounds incredibly powerful, like remixing your own knowledge.
It does seem that way based on the text. The source also covers handling file attachments and embedding images. It gives examples like file.pdf for attachments and .image.pne for displaying images directly within the note.
Okay, so it's really about integrating various types of content directly into the note, using this Markdown syntax, text, math, tasks, other note sections, files, images.
That's the picture painted by the source material. Standard Markdown plus these powerful integrations.
And getting these rich notes out, export options.
The documentation is clear on that. Export notes to MD or PDF via print. So get the raw Markdown or a formatted PDF.
Right. So that's the individual note, but knowledge is connected. How does Neuron 5.0, according to the source, handle linking between notes?
This is key. It highlights bi-directional links using WikiLink. So standard wiki-style linking.
Meaning if I link note A to note B,
Note B automatically knows note A links to it. You get backlinks automatically, helping you see connections you might have missed.
and the source confirms you can link to notes that don't even exist yet, to sort of plan ahead.
Yes, it explicitly mentions linking, including to new notes. Create the link now, write the note later.
Beyond just links, is there a visual way to see these connections?
Yes, the source describes an interactive graph view.
Ah, the knowledge graph. Always looks cool.
Yeah. The source says you can visualize note connections this way, and importantly, the nodes are clickable, so you can actually navigate through your notes using this visual map.
Interesting. Now, let's quickly pull in the Obsidian source here, just based on its description. What does it say about linking and graphs?
Well, the Obsidian description also talks about links to create connections and build your own personal Wikipedia. And it also mentions a graph to visualize the relationships and find hidden patterns.
So, purely based on these provided texts, it seems like both Neuron 5.0 and Obsidian highlight these core ideas, wiki-linking, backlinks, graph view, as pretty central.
The similarity in how they describe these core concepts in the source material is definitely noticeable. It suggests a shared understanding in this space about how knowledge should connect.
Okay, so we have rich individual notes linked together, maybe visualized in a graph. But as your collection grows, how do you organize it all? What does the Neuron 5.0 source say about structure?
It outlines a few tools. First, basic folders. And it mentions organizing them via drag and drop. Pretty straightforward.
Familiar, yeah. What about working with several notes at once?
For that, it mentions a tabbed interface. So you can have multiple notes open simultaneously side by side, which is handy for comparison or synthesis.
Makes sense. And for bigger picture organization, like separating work from personal projects.
The source introduces workspaces. It describes these as multiple distinct areas that you can manage and switch between using a dropdown. You can even rename them in line. Seems like a way to keep different contexts separate within the app.
Okay, folders, tabs, workspaces. The Neuron 5.0 source also talks about integrating notes into other kinds of workflows, right? Like daily planning or tasks.
It does. It details a daily journal and calendar. This apparently shows your note activity on a calendar, lets you make journal entries, and marks days that have entries. It connects your note-taking to time?
Ties it to your day. And tasks.
Yes. It describes task boards. These are presented as Kanban style for organizing projects, with inline editable lists and cards. So, project management features living alongside your notes.
So the idea seems to be weaving note-taking into daily and project management, not just keeping it separate.
That's definitely the impression the source gives. And interestingly, if you look at the other sources, Notion's description mentions projects as a key capability.
Right.
And the Obsidian source mentions Kanban specifically as a plugin type Markdown-backed Kanban boards.
So this blend of notes and task project management seems to be a theme across these tools, though maybe implemented differently built-in versus plug-in, perhaps.
Exactly. The sources suggest it's a recognized need, addressed in various ways.
Okay, we've covered capturing notes with that rich Markdown editor, linking them, organizing them. Now, what about that smart notes and AI assistance mentioned earlier? What does the Neuron 5.0 source actually say AI does?
The source is quite specific. It says you can leverage AI for summaries, composition, and auto-tagging.
Summaries, composition, auto-tagging, so helping process existing notes, creating new text, and organizing.
That's what it suggests. And for finding things, it mentions AI-powered semantic search.
Semantic search meaning it understands the meaning, not just keywords.
That's the implication, yeah.
Yeah.
Finding relevant notes, even if they don't use the exact words you searched for.
How does this compare to what the other sources say about AI? Again, strictly based on the text provided.
Well, the Notion source goes really big on AI. It calls itself your AI everything app, mentions AI meeting notes, and claims a #1-rated AI writing status. AI seems absolutely central to Notion's pitch in its description.
Very prominent. And Obsidian.
The provided Obsidian source doesn't highlight built-in AI features in the same way. It focuses much more on the open formats, local storage, and the plugin ecosystem. So AI might be available via plugins, but it's not presented as a core built-in feature like in the Neuron 5.0 and especially the Notion descriptions.
An interesting difference in emphasis based on these texts. Neuron 5.0 also mentioned data tables in its source. How do they fit in with the notes?
Right. The source says you can utilize customizable data tables for structured info. It talks about inline editing, defining special columns like PublishStatus or AITags.
So like mini spreadsheets or databases?
Kind of. And crucially, it says these tables can be linked to notes. So it offers a way to blend structured data with your freeform text notes within the same system.
Useful for tracking things alongside your thinking contacts, books, projects.
Precisely. It seems to be about offering flexibility structured data when you need it, linked to your unstructured notes.
Okay, let's wrap things up by looking at the practical side mentioned in the source's data access, that kind of thing. What do the materials tell us about the ecosystems?
This is where some interesting differences appear in the descriptions. Neuron 5.0's source mentions exporting notes to MD or PDF and importing Notion exports. That suggests some flexibility.
What about Obsidian on data based on its source text?
Obsidian's description is very forceful on this point. It explicitly says it uses open file formats, that you own your data for the long term, and that notes are stored privately on your device. It really emphasizes local first and user ownership.
A very clear stance. How does Neuron 5.0's source compare on that specific point?
The Neuron 5.0 excerpt we have mentions export formats and Notion import. But it doesn't make the same explicit claims about only local storage or the specifics of data ownership in that provided text. Notion, given its web access and apps for everything, strongly implies a cloud-based model in its description.
And getting to your notes from different places. Sync thing.
Neuron 5.0's source mentions Workspaces, but the excerpt doesn't detail the sync mechanism. Obsidian's source, however, talks about sync securely with end-to-end encryption available on any device and even mentions version history and potential collaboration.
And Notion.
Notion's description, listing apps for Mac, Windows, iOS, Android, plus web access, clearly points to a cloud sync model designed for access anywhere.
Okay, last point. Extending the tool or connecting it outwards. Plugins, integrations.
Neuron 5.0's source mentions themes for appearance and webhooks, incoming and outgoing for integrations. Obsidian's source heavily promotes its thousands of plugins and themes and open API, highlighting its extensibility via a large community.
And Notion.
Notion's description also mentions a large community and lists specific integrations with major services like Slack, Google Drive, GitHub.
So again, different approaches highlighted in their own descriptions. Obsidian emphasizes its open plugin system, Notion focuses on built-in integrations with popular apps, and Neuron 5.0 mentions themes and webhooks as connection points.
Yeah, it shows different strategies described in the sources for fitting into a user's wider toolkit.
All right, let's bring this all together for you, the listener. Our goal today was to give you a clear, source-based view of Neuron 5.0's note-taking, especially compared to what the Obsidian and Notion descriptions highlight.
And we really dug into the details from the Neuron 5.0 source. Its Markdown editor supporting not just basics, but also latex math, GFM tasks, embedding blocks from other notes, handling files and images. We saw how it uses bi-directional wiki links and a graph view for connections.
We also looked at organization through folders, tabs, and workspaces, and its integration with daily journaling and Kanban-style task boards.
Plus, the AI features for summaries, composition, auto-tagging, and semantic search, the option for structured data tables linked to notes, and the ecosystem aspects like export and the mention of themes and webhooks compared to the different approaches described for Obsidian and Notion regarding data ownership, sync, and extensibility.
All these specific features described in the source, from that noteblock ID embedding syntax to the AI summaries or the Kanban boards, these are the concrete tools Neuron 5.0 presents to help you manage your information.
They represent its answer, based on the documentation, to helping you capture complex thoughts, structure them, find the connections, and ultimately feel more in control of your knowledge, aiming for those aha moments the sources implicitly promise.
So this deep dive, sticking strictly to the words in the sources you provided, gives you that focused perspective on Neuron 5.0's approach within the context set by the descriptions of Obsidian and Notion.
It highlights the specific technical choices Neuron 5.0 makes, showing where its description overlaps with or diverges from the others in areas like the richness of the editor, the approach to AI, or the philosophy around data and extensibility.
Now, here's a final thought stemming directly from what we've unpacked from these sources. We saw how Neuron 5.0's editor, according to the documentation, has built-in support for things like mathematical notation, task lists within notes, and even embedding specific paragraphs from other notes.
Right, those very specific capabilities.
So consider this. Does having those specific tools readily available, right there in your editor, subtly change how you think or organize complex ideas? Does the tool shape the thought? For instance, if embedding blocks is easy, do you start thinking in more modular, reusable blocks? Or do you just seek out tools that already fit how your brain naturally works?
It's that classic question, isn't it? Does the technology nudge your thinking process, or does your process dictate the tech you choose? Something to definitely chew on.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the sources.